Starfield, deeply flawed, but fantastic. Is this going to be another Bethesda fanboy video where they're coping really hard? Let's find out.
Starfield is a great and terrible game. I love it while simultaneously hating it. It has incredible detail and nuance and yet massive oversight. How do I take out my gun? It's brimming with content while still missing the fundamentals of gameplay. I do like Starfield.
How can you be brimming with content yet simultaneously missing the fundamentals of gameplay? That sounds like something that should honestly be mutually exclusive. Both of these things can't happen simultaneously, I think.
Simply for the extreme wealth of detailed content, but its glaring flaws might be enough to put off players who aren't quite ready for a certain level of Bethesda jank. The insane.
And there we have it. Another one. Oh, you need to remember that this is a Bethesda game and you need to treat it like a Bethesda game, aka like it's a child with special needs. That's essentially what they're telling you. And by the way, if we treat this game like a Bethesda game, it's actually the worst Bethesda game by a landslide, okay? If we treat it like not a Bethesda game, it's still one of the worst games by a landslide.
The amount of loading in Starfield actually reminds me of PlayStation 1 era games. The onboarding experience explains almost none of the game's mechanics and nuance. How do I get off the toilet? Then the
Yeah, true. How do you get off the toilet? Just move like in any other Bethesda game, I guess, would be the right answer. No, but seriously, the amount of loading screens is twice the length that you are actually going to spend playing the game. It's from one cave, loading to a next cave, loading into another cave, probably, that looks like the last cave you were into. The loading screens alone destroy this game so hard, honestly.
Dead-eyed character dialogue is like 50% of the game, or at least it feels that way. And yet, so much of this game has incredible depth and gorgeous details that I have a hard time putting it down. If you're someone that's on the fence about playing Starfield, I hope I can shed some light on the best and worst qualities of Starfield that'll either trigger you to no end, or immerse you into Starfield's amazing missions and deeply reactive game world. For most gamers, I would imagine it'll be a combination of both.
Okay, let's see.
Now, let me begin by giving credit where credit is due. The artists are the true heroes of Starfield. Every nook and cranny of this game has incredible detail and thought behind it.
Okay, no, right off the bat, absolutely no. No, every single location you go to looks like it has not seen a woman's touch in 50 years, okay? Every single location is like a frat house. Everything's just there again. And guess what? None of these things are interactable. Well, this is interactable and this is a credit stick. But you know, you need to use the F key to actually highlight usable objects because there's just too much clutter. And guess what? When you highlight usable objects, none of them are actually interesting or, you know, expensive, so you don't want to pick them up. This is garbage. Every location, even laboratories, look absolutely just filled to the brim with useless garbage just because Bethesda's like, oh, look at this. This is better than Skyrim. Remember Skyrim where, you know, an average indoor space had like 3 chairs and a table and that was it? Now it has 15 tables and 50 chairs in each location and 15 piles of garbage. It looks just bad. It looks so bad.
I was particularly wowed by the clutter and interior detail when moving through just basic halves or star bases. There's so many little items and knickknacks everywhere. It really makes the world feel alive and is also used...
No, it feels the world looks stupid. It's like everything. And by the way, abandoned locations for 100 years are still crammed to the brim with tissues and shit. It's stupid. The world has suffered so much just because the Bethesda developers finally could put more than 3 things into the room. And this game suffers from it. Look, every single room is oversaturated with useless gunk.
masterfully as a storytelling tool. Plus, you can pretty much pick up and interact with everything in the environment, and that
No, you
alone brings
can't.
more realism and immersion to this game than anything else.
You literally can't interact with 97% probably of things. And the small percentage that you can, unless it's a weapons crate or medkit, you don't want to interact with.
NASA aesthetics, classic looking spacesuits, giant rocket ship engines, and clunky looking robots give it a fun but also nostalgic type of look, right on the edge of retro futuristic. And impressively, Starfield has created its own fairly unique look, which is pretty hard to do in the saturated world of science fiction. It's Cowboys meets NASA, with maybe a few hints of Blade Runner thrown in there for good measure. Now, one of the sad things about Starfield is that all the amazing artistry that's gone into the game is tied into an engine that feels quite behind the times.
That's
the
true.
Creation Engine 2. A lot of modern games.
Starfield, in short, looks like a game that released this year, but it should have been released 15 years ago. The same way that Skyrim feels like a game that also shouldn't have come out that year, even though it technically is good for its time.
Game engine tech has spent considerable time optimizing the streaming in and out of assets so that you can get rid of those pesky loading screens. Take, for example, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor games, where you have to, very similarly to Starfield, board a starship, fly up into space, and transition to a different planet and area. They do it very cleverly with no real noticeable loading screens.
Yeah.
Compare that to Starfield, which has seemingly more loading sequences.
When you start playing the game, getting from planet to planet is literally the equivalent of 4 different loading screens and 0 interaction between them. After you learn to use the fast travel, and the space exploration game literally becomes better when you skip the space part of it. With great design.
Sequences than a PlayStation 1 era game. Sometimes you dock on a station, which is a loading sequence. Then you walk up to another door shortly after,
which is
and
a
are met
loading
with another
sequence.
loading sequence. And it's sad because this is a game with such artistry and great attention to detail, and all the sense of immersion is killed by forcing players to load when they...
No, the sense of immersion is killed because this location where he is supposed to have been abandoned literally for 100 years or something like that. And you can still find sandwiches in it. That's immersion breaking. The fact that everything looks the same in this game, okay? The difference between the main cities is just pretty much just color. That's it. Nothing really else too much, honestly.
Want to do something simple like just walk onto their landed spaceship on the side of a planet. You can't get into the interior of your ship without first going through a loading sequence.
Yep.
Considering that this comes on top of poor performance to boot, and it seems like the Creation Engine is really holding back.
By the way, this
Bethesda
is another
in
loading
what could have
screen.
been a much smoother, more enjoyable experience. There's already mods out there to integrate DLSS support and fix up some of the weird black levels in the game. I can't help but wonder what kind of game Starfield could have been if it was on one of the more modern engines and wasn't suffering from so many what seem like unnecessary tech limitations. Even CD Projekt Red are switching away from the Cyberpunk engine, something that seems cutting edge, to use Unreal for their next project simply because it's going to be more cutting edge and easier to work with. Alright, tech rant out of the way, let's talk about one of the best aspects of Starfield. It's side missions. Starfield is massive, and in good RPG fashion, some of the best and most rewarding gameplay comes from going off the...
Starfield's RPG elements suck dick. They're worse than Fallout 4. They're the literal worst in any Bethesda game that has ever been. Okay? You don't have any choices. One of the first things you encounter in Starfield is like rescuing some guy from Spacers or something like that. And, well, you can kill the Spacers, or you can let the Spacers take the guy, or you can let the Spacers leave and take the guy. But you have no option of killing the Spacers and the guy, because most NPCs that are tied to quests are invulnerable. So, Starfield doesn't give you almost any options to finish quests in a different way. And when it does, it's very in-your-face, blatant, and stupid. You know? Compared to this to any other Bethesda game that you have played, you have, so many other. Every quest pretty much has at least two ways of being finished. In Starfield, no, there's only one way to do the quest, and maybe if you do a speech check, you don't even have to shoot them. And the real choice in Starfield is: do you shoot someone or do you talk to them? But other than that, there is no way to impact anything.
Main quest lines and getting wrapped up in some sort of crazy side adventure. These are often expertly crafted with a surprising amount of variety to them, and they can even give you impressive new upgrades that'll affect the rest of your adventure. I went on a mission to locate a legendary ship, and with it I got an awesome new spacesuit and a ship that was much better than my starter ship. And the mission involves some really fun shotgun base clearing combat, running into characters who will try to stab me in the back, booby trap puzzles, and robot sentries protecting valuable loot. And that was simply just one side mission in what must be hundreds ultimately. You can become a Wild West deputy solving squabbles around systems, a pirate, you can investigate ancient colony ships. The adventures are vast.
When he means a pirate, he means that you're gonna take on a main quest when the main pirate is gonna be when there's the main pirate and he wants to be betrayed by another pirate under him slightly, and that pirate under you tells you, hey, let's betray him, and then you say no, and he's like, okay, forgot I said anything. He doesn't try to shoot you. You can't even shoot him instantaneously after the conversation. He's invulnerable. There is no roleplay in this game.
And truly remarkable. Sadly, the main storyline does feel a bit cumbersome by comparison, with a lot of the main quest line falling into somewhat repetitive tasks. I won't say it's terrible, but the actual gameplay missions ended up feeling a lot more like work compared to the side quests, which ended up being the real treats. And one of the problems that I have with the main quest line is just the boring, basic writing and the sheer volume of dialogue that you have to get through. Every line of dialogue feels like awkward exposition with characters.
You see, the problem with this is they don't try to convince you on anything. Like, they don't give you a reason to join Constellation. They don't give you anything. You're just supposed to join. There are no options to say, like, well, I don't want to join your Constellation group. And then they're like, nonsense, you're joining anyway, come here. That's pretty much it. The game doesn't try to be convincing in its dialogue at any point. It's like written by a modern day, American leftist with pink hair, essentially. That's how bland the dialogue feels. There is no spark to it, there's nothing. You never need to be convinced of anything, and every character you always speak to is instantaneously like your best fucking friend of 20 years almost. They hide nothing from you, they tell you everything, none of it makes any sense. The dialogue at no point in the game tries to be convincing. They never try to convince you of anything. If you're not sold into the game of being the chosen one right off the bat, well, shit.
Characters you just met looking you deep into the eyes and then proceeding to divulge some personal truth, as if to say, this is the part where we bond. Some of your companions try to initiate dialogue trees, like divulging their struggles as a father, but it comes at really awkward times, like right in the middle of a mission or firefight that has nothing to do with what they're talking about. And the conversations are often long and uninteresting, which sucks because I'd be more than inclined to listen if I knew they might get to the point in a more entertaining or at least timely manner. And this is likely a result of the extremely open nature of Starfield. You can take or choose not to take a large number of companions with you on your adventures, and their AI has no tact for when to drop their life stories on you. In other games, the NPCs might chat at you while you're navigating.
By the way, do you know how you figure out the dialogue bad in a game? It's like this. This is the difference between good dialogue and bad dialogue. When you press something here, you will see what they are gonna say, and if everything you asked right there is literally delivered in the first 5 words, and then there's a dot, and there's like 3 more things, The only part that matters was the first one, and everything else is just gonna be useless gunk that keeps reiterating on the first 5 words of the sentence. Essentially, it's just talking much for the sake of talking more.
An environment together. Not so much in Starfield. You basically pause the game while you cut to a close shot of somebody followed by boilerplate dialogue trees. It feels really dated, and at least for me, not in a good or nostalgic way. Now, of course, a huge aspect of what makes these giant open world games fun is the loot and treasure hunting. If you like looting and being a pack rat, then Starfield has you covered. Everything is pretty much lootable, and most of it serves a purpose, and a lot of it can actually change how you're able to play.
Nothing's lootable.
Weapons are especially a highlight for me, and again, the artist simply...
The weapons are bad. There's like 3 laser pistols, but there's 3 things that auto laser damage. There's like honestly, there's literally just one thing that's melee damaged, as we now know from a different video, because all of them have the same attack animations and attack speed. So, every melee weapon is literally the same melee weapon. And then there's a bunch of ballistic guns that, are actual ballistic guns. It feels like only the ballistic section of the game was, made reasonable and actually has some, diversity in it. Everything else is garbage. And a Grendel having a legendary mod on it doesn't mean that it's actually a different gun. No, it's still a fucking Grendel.
Knocked it out of the park here. Classic revolvers and shotguns mixed with modern assault rifles, grenade launchers, and laser rifles. I love the look of these weapons, and they all offer different approaches to combat that can be heavily modified and upgraded to suit your specific needs.
No, they don't. This is how Starfield gameplay actually works. At first you're stuck with a Grendel, aka 75 bullets, which is the 1.5 clips, on a basic level 2 enemy to kill them. And after that, you maybe find some kind of legendary gun that literally does 1 billion damage. And I'm not even kidding. Unmodded guns that are just randomly doing 10x or 20 or 50x the damage any other gun that you have does. And then you just use that for the rest of eternity because there's no balance.
There's crafting, cooking, modding, base building, and it all functions off of the insane amount of loot and items that you'll pick up on your adventures. It's also surprisingly quick and easy to loot things. Look at a dead body or container.
No. The looting is the worst part. Okay, so credits makes sense. What is this? I don't know. What is a pirate assault space helmet? Well, it's a helmet, but how good is it? I don't fucking know. And what's a Maelstrom? I don't know. A gun, probably, but is it a good gun? Should I want it? I don't know. There's literally no information here. There was a mod, day 1, by the way. Well, day 2, I think. Day 2, that literally actually gave descriptions of what you're picking up. Because if you press R transfer, you're gonna open up their window, and guess what? The window that pops up here doesn't actually show you your weight. It shows the dead body's weight for some stupid reason. So, if you're close to being over-encumbered, good luck picking up shit, because you have no idea how much anything weighs.
And just hit E on the item you want on the pop-up list of loot. Usually it's ordered in a way where the ammo and meds are at the top, which is...
Starfield has the worst menus by far. The developers decided, you know what? Fallout 4 had decent menus, right? No one really complained. Fallout 3 had decent menus. Fallout New Vegas had decent menus. Skyrim had decent-ish menus. No one complained. Let's fuck it all up. They were so inept that they didn't even have the brains to just, copy paste the already existing mechanic for how picking up loot works. This is the worst mechanic of picking up loot that has ever existed in a Bethesda game by far, or in gaming in general, honestly.
what you would most likely want to loot every time. Sadly, this is one of the only UI features that I actually like in all of Starfield. The rest of the looting and storage system is a maze of confusion and inefficiency, which is bad considering just how much of the game's depth is based around it. Your companions can carry loot when you get too full, you carry loot, your ship can store loot, and even bases can hold loot, and it's all easily accessible in just 20 clicks. That's a joke. I really don't know how many clicks, nor could I tell you off the top of my head what the
one of the stupidest things also in these menus is when you go to a storage, the first thing it actually does is allows you to pick up things. The second stupid thing about the storage is, look at this inventory. This is your inventory, right? If you're trying to transfer something, for example, let's say on your ship, and you're transporting, let's say the grenades. You don't want the grenades. But let's say you have like 5 grenades, and you don't want any of them. Well, you click on this grenade window right here, and then you start just spamming E. And the moment you have no more grenades to actually give to the ship, it will automatically default to the to somewhere here on the main menu, and you will probably be still clicking E, and then you go into a random menu that you have no idea in which, and you actually deposit something you didn't want to deposit onto the ship. And then you have no idea what the fuck did you deposit on the ship, because there's like literally 200 different things there. That's gameplay.
Many clicks, nor could I tell you off the top of my head what the easiest way is to access all of your stuff. Transferring loot, comparing loot, finding items, and moving things around in this game sucks, and it makes me not want to partake in any of the additional activities simply due to the cumbersome UI. I find myself putting a lot of my skill points into carry capacity and ship inventory so I don't have to deal with the horrific process of comparing and selling gear as...
Skill points are just fucking bad, by the way. They're literally percent increases that don't matter.
Frequently. Starfield is also amazingly incompetent when it comes to actually teaching players how to play their own game. There's extensive Reddit threads and YouTube videos explaining basic features that you probably missed, even if you're like 40 hours into the game. Like how to simply use all the features on your cutter properly to mine faster and get more challenging ores. The UI doesn't give you key prompts or tooltips for a lot of the important things, forcing you to Google stuff. It's kind of wild how bad the onboarding actually is. And one of the clunkiest aspects of Starfield...
Well, to be fair, mining in this game is useless. Outposts produce 1 billion of any material you would ever want. And if you don't want to make an outpost, just go to a trader to any city. They literally sell all the rarest, non-rarest items, well, crafting items and supplies for literally pennies. Literally pennies. The rarest crafting ingredients you can get, pennies.
Is the actual space travel. Jumping between systems and planets can all be done through the menu system, but because jumps are usually just auto-calculated fast travels, there's no sense of scale or real traversal time. And this is a gameplay element that's actually really important for open world games, where they deliver a real sense of scale and journey, where it took a long time to get somewhere and things happened along the way. But a lot of that is lost in Starfield. Pretty much everything is just fast traveling through a really poorly designed menu system and basic cutscenes. And when the game inhibits your fast travel ability, forcing you to say run back to your ship or go between point A and point B, you basically know that some sort of event is about to trigger. It's another thing that really hampers the immersion of the game. Fortunately, it's not something that you have to deal with too much when you're on a really enjoyable side quest and you're spending a lot of time in one location, but when you're running some of the main story quests and you have to jump around talking to different characters, you spend most of your time in these fast travel sequences only to be led to long dialogue trees, and I find myself wondering when I'm actually going to get to start playing. Now again, you might actually enjoy that part of the game. I'll admit I'm a bit of a snob when it comes to writing and characters, and I tend to not enjoy game writing as much because I think it's often built around task-oriented gameplay, so even the
start of this game is 20 minutes of you waiting until this lady talks a bunch of bullshit that you literally don't care about and will never be important again in your entire life playing this game, and you doing nothing. Everyone gets so bored they just try to use the mining tool on the miners there because the intro to this game is, I don't know, 10 times longer than Skyrim's and 10 times less impactful. Well, no, 100 times less impactful.
Quote-unquote character building lines end up being obvious setups for future events down the road. Now, when it comes to building your own character, the skills and progression mechanics in Starfield are actually quite good, and they can drastically affect your gameplay choices. From being a
No, they aren't. Absolutely not. No, they aren't. This just means you're gonna get these perks, and that's pretty much it. Nothing else. Nothing else. It's just fancy words. You might as well just, you know, have the ability to pick the shit on your own.
Suave, persuasive protagonists who can talk their way out of any situation, to picking safe locks, to stealthing your way past combat, to captaining the most powerful combat ship ever, you can really sink your skills and development into the type of adventure that you specifically want to have. This is really cool. It's not necessarily new or innovative in the world of RPGs, but the depth of the system and how much it interacts with so much of the massive world is honestly impressive. In these types of games, I don't often find myself wanting to put points into...
By the way, he's fighting by standing still, pretty much, if you haven't noticed.
Say persuasion abilities, but Starfield has me considering it just to experience the different narrative paths. And I do say considering, because I'll admit my general approach to Starfield gameplay is to end boring dialogue trees by trash-talking my opponent into a firefight. Ah, the life of a space sociopath. Also, I gotta give Bethesda credit for a truly impressive character building system. I would argue there's maybe even too many customization options for facial features.
I mean, yeah, actually the character creation screen isn't that bad if you ignore the fact that most men look like women by default.
But if you really want to dial in the look of your character to something you've got in your head, you can probably get it pretty exact. Hey, he's got my beard, guys. We could do it. Not gonna do it. And of course, one of the more advertised features is the spaceship building and flying.
Which is useless.
However, for me, this whole process ended up being a mixed bag. I really do love the ship editor, and that it gives you a ton of freedom in changing how your ship looks and what features it's gonna bring to the table. You can recreate your favorite ship from a sci-fi show or just come up with your own creative, unique designs. The downside is that the spaceship combat is woefully basic, almost embarrassingly.
The ship, dude, people hype up the ship building so much even though it's literally like one of the most useless parts of the game. Your ship is an aesthetic decoration and serves no real purpose. You almost barely ever see your ship, if we're being completely honest. It's just there as a set piece. All this customization is nothing. It's useless. It gives nothing. It adds nothing.
So basically you show up to a mission site, pew pew the bad guy ships, hit a little repair button when you're hurt, and hit E to loot their wrecks. Once you upgrade your targeting skills though, you do have the option to start disabling ships, boarding them, killing the crew on board, and potentially stealing them. So there's a lot of cool gameplay there. It's just that the actual combat itself is fairly boring. And this really is kind of one of the major lessons of Starfield. It's not a sim, even in the slightest sense. It's much more of a traditional RPG, where you have spacesuits instead of medieval armor, and instead of mounting on your horse, you fast travel with a pew-pew spaceship. Anyone looking for the realistic or sim-like elements is gonna be disappointed with Starfield. And it's not entirely Bethesda's fault on this front. They wanted to make an RPG in space, and a lot of people just assumed that it would incorporate a lot of the space sim stuff that's
No, this is a lie. This is a common lie that every Bethesda fanboy says. They literally marketed this as a space exploration game where you can go wherever the fuck you please. A billion, well, not a billion, they didn't say a billion planets, but 1,000 planets to explore and all of that jazz. They literally always 100% marketed it as No Man's Sky level of freedom. They literally are on video saying that. I don't know why Bethesda fanboys feel the need to try and rewrite the past so much, but this is a blatant lie. You can find multiple videos where Todd Howard and everyone else in Power and Bethesda and Microsoft is literally telling you, yeah, you can fly from planet to planet, space exploration and shit. They literally sold it as you can fly wherever you want. Literally with those words. It's insanely stupid that people try to rewrite this history.
Space gamers enjoy, but for the most part it doesn't, and instead it's just a fun change of scenery for what's ultimately a very content-rich but janky Bethesda RPG. Now, Starfield is already and arguably a massive hit. The sales are astronomical, and people
The sales don't exist. The sales don't exist. This is another common lie. Xbox understood how shit Starfield is, so they literally decided, hey, let's put this on Game Pass, which is one of the stupidest moves ever. If you think your game is going to be successful, it's new, and it's a Bethesda game, you know? Bethesda, one of the gaming studios everyone and their granny knows about. Yeah, you don't put a game that you think is good on Game Pass day one. You can do it after a month, or after 2 or 3 months, or whenever you want. But this thing was essentially free for Game Pass subscribers from day one. It has no sales. It's garbage.
Gameplay out of this experience. The game delivers tons of content and depth, but it just might not be in the ways that you care about. I really enjoy the world that they built and the stylistic choices that they've taken. And some of the mission running is extremely fun and immersive and has kind of...
Like, look at this. Look at this. This is just a random abandoned space station thing, and look how much useless gunk there is. This is insanity. There's a projector light here. There's foil there. It's not foil. It looks like aggro foil. There's something there. There's a tarp there. There's this there. There's... Why? Why is every location this... It just makes the world look shitty when you notice it.
And has kind of wild, zany stuff happening, and when that is going on, Starfield is at its best. Having that true RPG freedom to approach missions in the way that you feel best suits your playstyle, and in addition to that, having the results of the mission potentially reflect on the rest of the game world and your options later in that playthrough. It really does make you feel connected to the universe. However, at the same time, the clunky parts of the game are just embarrassing, especially when you consider that this game spent about 8 years in active development and had a budget of over $200 million. I would expect a lot more quality of life features and, frankly, just more innovation of the old...
I mean, I would expect the game in the first place, but hey...
clunky mechanics. But that old school Bethesda jank is still here, in my opinion, much to the game's detriment. Will this company ever escape its now cliche problems, or will Elder Scrolls 6 also have billions of loading screens and off-putting dialogue zoom-in sequences?
Well, considering it's literally made on the same engine.
Who knows? If the success of Starfield teaches...
Also, it's made by the same people. I don't know how much we can expect from it.
Bethesda anything is to keep doing the same thing because people are buying the...
But remember, if you're unhappy with anything I said, you can always write in the comments, but the critics gave it a 10 out of 10.
Heck out of it. I don't want to end this first impressions video by saying Starfield is a good or bad game. Some people are absolutely going to love every second that they're in this game.
Yeah, they're called Bethesda fanboys and they should not be ever taken seriously because they are functionally insane.
World, and that could be for many.
I technically understand why some people could unironically think of this game as good. If this is like one of their first games, or you know, outside of like Call of Duty or anything that's literally on rails. I kind of understand where people are coming from if that's their background. But for anyone who has played open world games like this is just blatantly shit.
Hundreds of hours, especially once the modding scene really gets up to speed.
The modding, people who use mods are like less than 1% of the player base.
There's no telling what can be done with Starfield. But at the same time, I think there's going to be a lot of gamers who just don't want to deal with the really poorly executed interface, the travel system, the extremely lengthy and bland dialogue trees. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I've enjoyed a lot of my time with this game so far because a lot of the adventure elements are really...
No, you enjoyed this game because you are clearly a Bethesda fanboy.
Really well crafted, but I also have
anyone who rates this game in the small universe of, well, it's a Bethesda game, is clearly just a fanboying to all hell and back.
a hard time not noticing all the little things that are dragging this game down and thinking about just how much better it could have been if Bethesda was willing to just innovate a little. If you're in the mood for a deep RPG with tons of adventure and character building and dialogue trees, then this may scratch your itch. But if you're hoping that Starfield would be a great space game that caters to all of your space game fantasies, you might get annoyed by some of the cumbersome RPG elements. I hope this video gives you some valuable insight into whether or not Starfield is going to be a game.
No, it did not.
As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And next up, check out my new podcast that I started with Matimio. It's called the Level With Me podcast. It's
okay, well, let's see if there's a plug. There's no plug at the end. Wow, you disappoint me, Level Cap Gaming. Well, we saw it at the start, but you know, hey, it is what it is. Anyway, this was Quizzer Said. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.